YouTube vinyl community, Beatles fans, random people on the internet, my name is Giggens, and today we're here to talk about the Australia-New Zealand release from 1972, The Essential Beatles. Released to celebrate the 10th anniversary of the group in 1972, this predates the Red and Blue albums by a full year. It's a really interesting collection of songs because, I always think of the charts in terms of like how they were in England or America, and it's amazing to think just of the reach the Beatles had and what songs were popular in different regions. This album was also extremely popular, only being deleted in the early 90s when the UK releases were officially granted official status. They always were, but they got rid of the American albums, they got rid of anything from Germany, any release anywhere else in the world. They're like, nope, gone, English only, that's it. So this album was in print until 1991, at least on CD, at least on tape anyway. There's no CD copy of this thing, it was never put out in CD. I don't know why. Maybe because the Red and Blue albums came out and kind of usurped it and made this kind of useless. But I've talked to a handful of people and they grew up with this record and it's like essential to their collection. Ha! Released on February 2nd of 1972, only in Australia and New Zealand, this record collects all the big hits that came out during their career in those respective countries, primarily Australia. Um, Everything on this album went to number one, bar for a few songs, but they were all within the top three. Everything's in the top three. And it's a really interesting mix of tracks because there's three Ringo songs on here, three Ringo lead vocals, I should say. George only gets one, Paul gets the majority of it, and John gets a handful after Paul. So George gets one song on this thing. He gets Something is the one song on here. And there's a handful of Ringo, which is kind of surprising, but Honey Don't was a massive hit down there. The track listing is done kind of like on shuffle. I would say the first side focuses mostly on early stuff, but they do have Baby You're a Rich Man on there and Penny Lane. Second side is mostly the older era, like the late 60s, but Norwegian Wood is on there, so who knows. This record is also fascinating because it has a couple of mixes that aren't really anywhere else. So there's a couple of tracks on here like Norwegian Wood and Long Tall Sally where the stereo channels are reversed. Most of this album is in stereo except for Love Me Do and P.S. I Love You and Baby You're a Rich Man. Those songs are all fake stereo, but everything else is stereo. But Penny Lane on here is actually the German 1971 mix for Magical Mystery Tour. I guess EMI Australia tried getting the original UK mix and they were sent this one instead. But it's a slight difference in the fact that it's got just the slightest amount of warble and it's a little bit slower, making for kind of a sludgier sounding track, which is kind of weird. Norwegian Wood sounds fantastic. I don't know if it's because the stereo channels are reversed, but the clarity on the guitars is unreal and the vocals are so crisp. It's just the 1965 mix. There's nothing particularly different about it, but I don't know, maybe it's because the channels are reversed. I'm hearing things that I was kind of like, whoa, my ears were perking up, and I've heard this song a million times. So, that was awesome. Let It Be on here is the album version for those wondering. And one of my most interesting takeaways from this record is With a Little Help from My Friends. Almost every release you hear, whether it's the Blue album or any greatest hits albums that has that song on it, you get that intro of Billy Shears and then dan, 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 and then Ringo comes in. On this one, it's a really bizarre edit that kind of fades in from that little guitar lick and just basically starts with Ringo. And it's kind of off-putting. It's fun to hear, but you really are kind of like, what the hell? If you've watched my channel for a long time, or maybe this is your first video that you're watching, and if so, hi. And if you're watching for the millionth time, also, hi. I love compilation albums. I love greatest hits. I love buying these things from different countries to see what was a hit somewhere else or who put these things together and what was the track listing and what was the idea behind the track listing. I live for this stuff. Let me show you the back cover because while the track listing on the front is exactly to the record itself, if you look in the back, it's got these great pictures of the guys, from like early days, like, Silver Beatles up until, Abbey Road, where they all had beards. But what's cool is that they list the year in the top and the songs that came out in that year in that country. So, for instance, you do have things like Long Tall Sally saying 1965, Magical Mystery Tour saying 1968, whereas that may have been the case at that time. Obadi Obada shows 1969 as well. Maybe it was a single that year. But it's really cool to see, like, I love the pictures, but it's also just cool to see when these songs came out in Australia. It's on a really gorgeous looking Apple Records label. So it's a legit album. It's real. Like this is part of the catalog from back in the day. before it was deleted when the UK stuff was made permanent. I guess it was always permanent, but it was kind of like, all right, no one else is making anything else that says Beatles on it anymore, unless it's the official records we put out in England. So everything else got deleted. But this thing is absolutely stunning. It is in like the most perfect, beautiful shape ever. But I just love seeing that label. It just looks so cool. So there you go, kind of a short little video. I mean, obviously it's a compilation album and we've heard all these songs before, but I just wanted to showcase this particular record because I picked it up in Australia when I was down there last month. And it was one of those things I found which at the time I didn't realize was like a thing because I'm not from Australia. I don't know every Beatles release ever. I know a lot of them, but not all of them. So seeing this was really, really great. And when I started to investigate it more, I realized just how special it was and how much it meant to so many people who grew up with this record. So if you had grown up with this record, please let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear your memories of maybe you got it for a birthday present or for a holiday or something. Let me know what your memories were growing up with this album. But 10 out of 10, it's the Beatles. Come on. It's just fun. I thought it'd be kind of cool to talk about something different from a different country and show that it was still part of their official catalog, even though now it's not. Kind of like how the US Beatles albums are slowly coming back as official, or maybe they're just like a curio kind of piece, but whatever. Anyways, The Essential Beatles, 10 out of 10. My name is Giggens. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know your memories with this classic album below, and we'll chat about some Beatles. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video. Take care of yourselves. Bye-bye.